Now you can see when we click on this view here that the text is now at the center instead of at the very top of this added text here. Let me hit home there. And you can go through and go ahead and change as many of these as you want, and so you can see what happens when you change these certain kinds of things. Now, alright, now you might be wondering why this list view doesn't have a view file associated with it. Well, I'll be talking more about that in another course on how if the controller extends the list view activity class, then the list view is by default the main view of that activity. But I'll talk about that in another course. Alright, one last set of view to get at here, and that is the preferences. You can see that the preferences doesn't usually have a standard, you don't see any edit text or buttons here. Let me show you what the preferences look like. This is what the preferences screen looks like. You see we have an author, we have a version, and at least having a preference screen with an about so that users know who this application was created by. Do you also know what version it's on so that they can cross-check with the Playstore to make sure that they're running the latest version? Optionally, you can also have a send feedback, and what I've hooked this up to do is it sends an email to a certain email address, and this is a way for users to point out bugs or point out some possible features without them having to open up the Play Store and then go through all the comments. This is just a very nice, elegant solution so that users right off the top of their head can go to Preferences and send feedback. Alright. Now we have a preference category, and that was, let me show you here. This preference category is, the title of it is a string resources about. You can see that the preference category is this right here. And you see we have 3 preferences, and all with their respective titles: send feedback, author, version. And you can see instead of an ID, preferences have a key, and the key essentially acts like an ID. You can see this summary here. This summary is a smaller size of text that goes underneath the title. And you see in both these cases we have that these 2 items are not enabled, meaning they're slightly grayed out, and the user, when they tap on it, you see nothing happens. Let's go back here. Alright, so that's enough about these kinds of views. Let's move on to these menus I was talking about. Now, we can see these menus are just what these action bar actions are. So we have add note, we have map, and then we have an overflow menu with preferences in it. Like I said before, you don't need to know any kind of XML in order to create a menu file. So you can see I gave it an ID, I gave it a title, and this interesting construct here, you give it an icon, but you can see this is not my icon. That add button is a system resource used by Android. Now, in order to refer to these resources, you would use @Android : drawable, and then IC_menu_add. And then what happens when you use this Android namespace is any kind of system resource, like any system icons, any system text, that's all available to you. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. You can see here we have show as action, and I've put both of these on as always, as in they'll always be on the action bar. Let's see what happens when we change this a little bit. You see we have never, as in it'll never be on the action bar. We have if room, as in the system is smart enough to detect if we can fit all the icons in. You see that we can always have it on. We can choose, like what I've done with add and map, we can always have it show on the action bar no matter under any circumstances. And you can have it as an icon and then also have text. Now, this is mainly useful in tablet situations, but we're not running on tablet situations. Let's just say we'll always show the preferences. We save that, go to run, choose our emulator. We'll just give it a minute, and here we are. You can see that this preferences is now always going to be on this action bar. Now, in the case of preferences, you don't want to show this on the action bar. You don't want to take up the space that other helpful actions could be using. Not very frequently is the user going to open up preferences. What they're going to do is they're most likely going to add notes or see the map. The preferences is sort of a secondary kind of action, so we should probably put that in the overflow menu so that it doesn't take up space. Now, in this instance, it doesn't matter that much because there's only one icon in the overflow. But say you have maybe a help menu item and an about menu item, well, those kinds of things take up space on the action bar, and the user isn't going to be accessing those all the time. So you want to probably set that as action to never or if room. Alright, let's move on here. And what we have here is the contextual action bar. Now, what this contextual action bar is you see these icons here. Well, if I long press on a list view item, in the controller I've hooked the on click of a list view item up so that it replaces the standard action bar with what is known as a contextual action bar. You can see we have this menu share and menu delete. And this contextual action bar is very helpful if you need to perform actions on a list item, or maybe you have a list of thumbnails of images and you need to you can choose to share those, delete those. Maybe you want to move them to a different folder or a different album, and you can do that all by long pressing on it or by some other method. The contextual action bar is made so to operate on one or another series of units. In this case, we only want it to operate on one note. We can choose to share this note or delete this note. And then it is dismissed by just like that. And you can see the contextual action bar is just a menu. When we initialize the contextual action bar, it's essentially just a menu. Alright, and you can see if we open this edit activity, we have the menu item save, and save is only shown if there's room. You can see that share is always shown, and you see that discard is shown if there's enough room. Now, order does matter here, in the sense that save is coded in before discard, indicates that save will probably show up if there's room rather than discard. This course is brought to you in collaboration with Pablo Farias. It is also brought to you by Zenva. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/ZenvaDev, ZenvaDev. You can also follow us on Twitter at ZenvaTweets, ZenvaTweets. We also have great other courses on application and game development.